Hello and welcome back to Conversations with Friends. Oh my God, we're so happy to have you back. And I am here with the fabulous Dr. C. Love.
And I'm here with the one and only Danny McFarland.
And we are so happy that you guys came back to join us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we are going to jump into some more personal explorations through life and how we found our way out and the lessons we learned from it. And the blessings that come to us often and the challenges we face.
And most importantly, it's his turn.
So you're welcome to turn the channel.
No, turn up the volume.
Turn up the volume.
So, Danny,
yes.
Going within, and, because life is what it is. It's often a roller coaster. But can you just share with the audience, a little bit about your journey in life so far?
Oh, wow. That's a big enchilada.
I know, and maybe something that was a significant life challenge for you.
Okay. Well, some of you may know already, but I'll just talk about the big shift for me that propelled me into this, finding the lessons in life, the spirituality. I call it a spiritual awakening of sorts for me. And that was my accident. I used to be a deputy sheriff in Sacramento, California. And I loved doing that job. It was a lot of fun. I was loving my career and the direction I was going in life. I had gone through a lot of struggles and challenges to even get to that point.
Get to that point. That was an achievement. You thought you arrived.
I really did. Ironically, I was like, all right, well, I'm actually in a career and I love it, and I worked really hard, to save up and start buying homes, and was in a relationship, and I was real close to popping that big question, and that was like the next step was like, hey, I'm going to get married, I'm going to have a family, and then one Wednesday morning at approximately 8 a.m., while on a routine call, I ended up getting drugged halfway hanging out of a suspect's car. Turned out to be a parolee at large. And
wow.
I was in the process of trying to pull him out of his car when he threw the car in reverse. And he drugged me 115 yards in reverse. And then we hit a light pole going approximately 70 miles an hour.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So what were you thinking? I mean, if you could take us back to that moment when you realized this wasn't going to be your ordinary call, like, how did you have a premonition, or like at what moment did you realize?
That's an interesting question, because the call that I got hurt on was a very basic routine call. It was actually a consensual contact. The individual was cooperative. There was no indication there was nothing to indicate like, hey, there's a huge problem here. Until we ran him on records, it came back that he had a warrant for his arrest. At that point, I asked the individual to step out of his vehicle. He knew he was a parolee at large, so he reached forward, turned the car on, and that's when I grabbed him and tried to pull him out. And it's ironic, because even when that experience was going on, to this day, I can remember it like in slow motion. Every little step. And honestly, it may have served me to have had more fear in that situation, to recognize the life and death situation that I was in the middle of. Maybe I would have been able to respond in a different way and taken other use of force to end it sooner. However, I kept feeling like there was something else I could do.
Yes.
And I would just honestly, for all intents and purposes, I should have died in that accident, and was incredibly fortunate, by the grace of God, to survive that situation.
And what kind of injuries did you sustain?
I broke my neck. I broke my C5. I obstructed my right vertebral artery. I ruptured and herniated several discs in my neck, back. different levels, but the severe ones mainly
Mm-hmm.
were the bottom 5 levels in my back and 4 levels in my neck, torn ligaments, tendons, nerve damage, lots of nerve damage, which was one of the biggest struggles and my challenges. And
And nerve damage is.
oh yeah, I mean it was literally like full body trauma. I mean there wasn't a part. Every joint in my body ached so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Felt like my body was on fire. Felt like I was being stabbed by 1,000 knives. I felt like an elephant was sitting on top of me, and this was just constant.
Mm-hmm. How long did you stay in the hospital?
Well, they brought me in for a few hours and sent me home.
Wow.
They shot me with medication. I remember them asking me. They remember them lifting my head up and then letting go of it, and I remember my head falling backwards, and everything in you don't even recognize it. It just happens every day. Like your muscles, tendons, whatever, tighten to hold your head up. And I remember everything went to do that, but my head just kept falling. And then the pain of all those tendons, ligaments, whatever it was just excruciating.
Mm-hmm.
They put a neck brace on me. They never did an MRI. And they sent me home.
Wow.
It took them, well, they didn't know I had a broken neck then.
Clearly. They just sent you home.
And that was because I went in there with a typical mentality for me at that time where I wasn't going to complain.
Yes.
Like they're professionals, they know how to do their job. The way that I related to being a man at that time, the way that I judged what complaining, to be wrong or bad, was not a very good advocate for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And my way of handling pain was more of humor and discounting it. So I was joking around but I was in massive pain.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't saying like, hey, no, there's a problem here. You need to do something differently about this.
And did you also like consider your coworkers? I mean, you're tough. You're law enforcement. You're a sheriff. Did you feel like you had to prove you were strong?
No, that was just part of the way that I was ingrained to be as a person.
Okay.
My conditioned self. I just had that mentality, which served me quite well in many ways to get through challenges, to overcome. I mean, I was an athlete my entire life growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was used to overcoming adversity and pain and to not allow that mental weakness, as I would have called it then, to get in the way of achieving my outcome.
So how did you come to realize that you were really hurt?
Oh, I knew. I didn't have to come to realize. I knew it.
I mean, like the vertebrae and the detail level, not just agony, not just hurt, but like, oh my God, this is really, really, I'm really, really hurt.
Oh yeah.
Not hurting, but hurt. My body is broken.
Well, I mean, I knew it. I mean, I can remember that very night. So I was sent home, and I stayed with my girlfriend at the time. She brought me back to her place. And I remember just being in excruciating pain. And when it came to going to bed, I kind of wobbled over to the bed and then tried to turn, was that vertical or horizontal, to lay down. And just that slight tilt, even with the neck brace on, just that little bit of off balance caused excruciating pain. I mean, I was in so much pain that I literally was like, I can't even go far enough to lay down. So I went back and sat in her lazy boy, and then I just attempted
to just lean back a little bit.
I couldn't even really go back, but just to sit in there and try to try to sleep like that. And then I was in so much pain from attempting to do that I had one of these episodes where I had paralysis. Like I could feel it rush over my head and down my arms and everything, paralyzed. And I literally fell out there and couldn't move and I remember actually, I'm getting little flashbacks of it now. And this is part of my mentality too. At the time, my girlfriend was like, "I've got to call the ambulance," and I was so embarrassed. I had such a againstness from the embarrassment of being picked up by an ambulance, and all the neighbors know, and it wasn't even my house, but just that was part of like, oh,
they don't even know you that well. It's just the point.
No, it was like, oh no, and what if I were to be picked up by an ambulance, and it wasn't a horrific thing? So I remember laying there for a while and then getting her trying to scoop me up and get me into the car so that she could drive me there, even though I was literally in this excruciating pain. We got to the hospital. They admitted me overnight, shot me with a bunch of medication for the pain. Didn't do anything else that I can think of. And I don't think I was even overnight. Maybe it was 4 or 5 hours, and then they sent me home again. And so I went back home, and then 5 months into it, I was actually working with a physical therapist, and they were trying to twist my arms and the neck and do these different exercises with me to rehabilitate me. And even with them, I never even complained to them. But there was something about my physical therapist that I respect her so much to this day, because somehow with her working with my body without me bitching and moaning about it, made her go. She discharged me. She told my doctor, sent him a letter saying, "I refuse to treat this patient anymore until you figure out what's really wrong with him."
Wow. So she was like an angel, guardian angel looking out for you.
Absolutely. And if it wasn't for that, who knows if they would have ever found it. That's when they did an MRI, came back that I had broken my neck. And that was a funny situation as well, because I was getting ready to get on an airplane to fly to Phoenix. And the doctor was like, what are you doing right now?
Where are you?
Before you even told me
Don't move.
He said, "Where you at? What's going on right now?" "Oh, hey, doc, I'm packing my bag, getting ready to head at the airport." And he says, "You can't go." I'm like, "What?" Is anybody there that can drive you to the hospital? And I'm like, yeah, why? What's going on? And he's like, your neck's broken. I want you to try as hard as you can to not move your neck.
5 months later.
He's like, you can't drive a car. You need someone to drive you. I'm like, for 5 months I've been driving around. You have me in physical therapy, tweaking my neck left and right. And now suddenly it's urgently important that I don't move. And that I get to the hospital immediately.
So now what are you thinking? I mean, I know there's that, but was that like finally, was there some relief in hearing that there was something specific that, you know what I mean, that they could identify as a source of what you were going through physically?
That's a great question. I don't recall offhand at that time. Hey, motorcycle. Yeah, that's a good question. I don't recall.
So then what? Now you're back at the hospital. They now know what's wrong. What happens? And at that point, did they check your neck and your back? Did they do like a whole body scan?
No, they didn't want to spend more money than they had to. It was interesting. I mean, it was workman comp stuff, so they're trying to save a buck everywhere they can. And
even for a law enforcement officer that was injured in the line of duty.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that was part of the challenge.
Isn't that disappointing? Did you feel betrayed?
I didn't. I don't think I ever went. I had such a mentality not to go into being a victim, being upset about. I can remember. It reminds me of somebody. Well, there's a few people who came to me and asked me what happened, and I shared a bit of the story, and the fact that the the guy that tried to kill me, who was already on parole for assault and a peace officer before, had only spent, I'm trying to remember, because they ran it concurrent with his violation, which means it didn't add the time. When he served that time, it also counted towards my time. So he literally did, I'm trying to remember if it was like a year to a year and a half is all he really did for trying to kill me.
Wow.
Yeah. And I remember people were so bothered by that, so upset. They couldn't believe that that's the way it was handled. They said, "You must be so upset about that."
He said, no.
I said, honestly, like, I don't sweat the shit I can't control. And that was just, fortunately, a way of approaching life that served me at that time to help me. Because I had to use so much of my energy to get through every day without wanting to kill myself or someone else. And so for me to waste energy focusing on something else I don't have any control over.
You just couldn't afford to spend it that way.
Right. It was more like a logical, rational way of relating, of getting myself through the hell that I was going through.
And how long did it take before you were able to get back on your feet, so to speak?
I mean, in some regard, I'm still working through things to heal through that, in many ways. I spent a decade at least permanently disabled. They told me I'd never get better. I went to top surgeons at Stanford that work on the NFL players, and they all just said, "Hey, Danny, you're lucky to be alive."
And that's where they were just like, consider yourself lucky to be alive.
Hey, lucky to be alive. We can. And when they finally did a fusion on my neck, it didn't heal. So that was a non-union. So then they were wanting to force me to go back in to get surgery done again. And so the neck where it broke never healed. And then the fusion never fused. So technically, as far as I know, that's still the case.
So did you go back to law enforcement?
No, I did not. For 2 years, I jumped through hoops trying to get my butt back. I loved it, man. I loved the guys. I loved what I did. Just being a part of that community, being part of Pig Bowl, which is a big charity game we played every year.
Pig Bowl?
Yeah, Pig Bowl. Like the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
They call it Guns and Hoses now. I guess we play at a fire department. That was a big deal, playing in the Police Olympics every year. You're a sports guy growing up. It has that incredible camaraderie and sense of connection. Anytime, I think anybody who's been through certain challenges and struggles in their life, there's something beautiful. Like if there's a hurricane coming or whatever, I mean, the way that community can join together, regardless of your background or where you're from, and you're like side by side working together.
That camaraderie is just amazing.
Incredible feeling. And so I think there's definitely something in that with law enforcement, with your brothers and sisters out there, working to overcome the challenges with society, community usually having a negative outlook on you and judging you often in a way that's not accurate. The odds are against you, and you just have to overcome them anyways.
So, after you realized that you weren't going to be able to return to this profession that you love dearly, or the camaraderie, the bowls, the Olympics, all of those things, like what was your process like in coming to own that as a new reality? And I mean, and then how did you cause a shift? What did you do?
Well, I think the reality of that came a very, very long time later. In my mind, I was for many, 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 many years was still fighting with the idea of getting back to my brothers and sisters, and being a part of that still. And, I went on in other areas. It was very challenging for me there was such an incredible awareness around, because often we think like, oh, I can't wait to retire. I can't wait to have nothing to do. Like, it sucks that I have to get up and go to work today. And what I found out at very young, I was 29 years old when this happened to me. And what I realized was like, man, like without purpose, life is meaningless.
Yes.
Or it can feel that way. And having a reason to wake up in the morning, having to go to work is a reason to get your butt up out of bed and go somewhere.
If you want to keep that bed, you have to get up and go to work.
Absolutely. And so there was a huge struggle, I would say, with my identity and having to come to terms with, in my mind, I felt like I'm going to get better. I'm getting back. That's just the way it is. And I would say that related often to the way that I attempted to control my circumstances, my situations, to get my desired outcome. And that's very helpful in certain ways. I overcame a lot in my life, a lot of reasons I could have just made excuses and not ever got to where I was. So it definitely served me, but there was an element of also recognizing that I am not in control of everything. And if I'm not able to overcome it, like in my case, I wasn't. And that was very beyond humbling. It was very embarrassing to me. I looked at it as a reflection of my worth, as my value. And now my lack of success, in a sense, meaning like getting back to work, getting back healthy, was now a reflection to me of how I'm not doing a good enough job.
That you couldn't reclaim the life that you had.
That's right.
Did you get depressed?
That's a good question. I mean, I would say that I did. I would say that I related to it maybe in a different way than it usually looks on people. But absolutely. I mean, I did not really realize the struggle, the depth of the struggle that I was going through until after I healed my body and was looking back. Because I was so disconnected from it. I was so in denial of it, which in certain ways, like I'm saying, served me and helped me to get through.
Protect you a little bit.
Well, it helped me to like, hey, I'm good. Hey, put on that smile. And in certain ways, that was one of my challenges, was feeling misunderstood a lot. Because it was what I had going on, you couldn't see.
Couldn't tell. Which often happens with people when they're going through trauma. It's like their personal, it's not a secret, but it is.
Well, absolutely. Because what I realized is, hey, I was a young guy in good shape. You couldn't see. It's like if you see a cast on someone's hand, or you see them in a wheelchair, or you see, that helps us to interpret like, oh, they're having a hard time. They're going through a struggle. Whereas in my case, there was nothing external you could see. So the only way you're going to know is if I'm telling you and I'm complaining about it and I'm playing into it. And where my challenge was is anytime I was in public, I wanted to look as normal. I didn't want, like, to me, getting attention about being hurt was the opposite of what I wanted.
Exactly. And that's understandable.
Yeah.
And then even if you're saying it, if they can't see it physically, it could be, oh, this is just somebody, they just want some empathy or some sympathy. You know what I mean? Because they're like, well, you look good to me. You know what I mean?
That's
you
right.
Can't possibly be as bad off as you're saying.
Yep. Well, that's the thing, is that's where my judgment, when we talk about projections and opportunities for me to learn and grow, that was one of them. Because I had such judgment around people that were whiners or bitchers or complainers, like the words that I would have used at that time is you got to suck it up and overcome that. And in a certain survival mentality, in a certain environment like that, yes, that mentality can serve you. but in the way of relating to others and loving others unconditionally. It was when I was suddenly put into that space to where no matter what I did, I couldn't overcome that.
Yeah.
Then that yeah, it was just an incredible challenge.
And see, and for me, I'm like, the last thing you ever want to tell me is suck it up.
Yeah.
Because that's just my makeup. That's
Right.
just like, I mean, I'm vulnerable. I'm like, I'm a feeler. You tell me suck it up. I mean, tell me how I'm going to get through this and I can make it and things like that. But you tell me suck it up, like shut your feelings down. That to me, that's what suck it up means.
Yeah.
It means stuff your feelings, get over it, kind of a mentality. And I sometimes I have to go through things, and that sounds a little bit like where you found yourself. Like you weren't gonna be able to use any of the things that had worked before that were your go-tos.
Absolutely. And then some of the other lessons in there were the way that I related to asking for help. I considered that a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
If I wasn't able to handle or accomplish things on my own, then that meant I wasn't doing a good enough job as the man I was supposed to be in life.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to ask for others for help was just a sign of my weakness or my lack of ability. And that was such a struggle for me to, in one way, I'm holding everything back about what I'm really going through, but then frustrated that on another level that nobody understands.
Yes, it's like, how can they?
How can they? How can they possibly understand? And that's with anything. I mean, we all experience that in our own ways. And that's where empathy comes in, is we don't even have to experience, but we can relate in our own ways with different challenges and struggles we might go through, and think about, like, what did I have to go through in order to understand that?
And what you said is so profound, because what I hear in that is, even if I tell them, how can they really understand? And how can they really understand if I don't tell them? It's like,
hey, it's a double-sided sword. I say the very thing that helped get me through it was also what made it incredibly challenging. My will and determination to never give up is in many ways what helped me to get through it. However, in other ways, it made it such a challenge. And so often people, there's a part I haven't told you about yet is how I significantly healed my body.
okay.
So decade later, keep in mind, as I was trying to mention before, I was on 10 different medications for pain, for nerve damage, for fibromyalgia, every joint, every part of my body ached constantly, every second, every day. I felt like I just wanted to rip any and all limbs off just to relieve some bit of pressure. And and it was when I met my holistic practitioner. And so I'm sorry to rewind a little bit about the medications and stuff. So the challenge in that also was, well, I'm 29 years old when I started going through this. How long? I know this one causes liver problems. This one causes kidney problems. This one causes this problem. This one causes that problem.
Yeah.
Like, how long am I going to live
if I keep taking all of this stuff?
And I would ask, like, well, I'd ask the doctors, is this going to make me better? Oh, no, it's going to help with that. And it's going to help with, well, is it going to help make it better? Or is it just going to help mask it? Well, and it was just back and forth that I had to go through for them to admit, like, well, no, it's not going to get better. This is just going to help you. And keep in mind, they're doing the best that they know how to do.
Yeah.
They really are. I believe this. I don't believe that any of them were trying to. They're working with what they've been trained with and what they know how to work with. And
it's the practice of Western medicine.
Yeah.
To throw a pill at it.
Absolutely.
Or surgery and a pill.
Well, yeah, and there's a huge business in that. And there's elements of it that really helps and serves when there's not another option. Because I do know on the other side, people are like, well, see, that's the problem. Like, da 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 da. Well, keep in mind, if you don't have another way to resolve that issue, like that is better than nothing.
Amen.
It really is. And I
It's definitely better than nothing.
absolutely. I mean, yeah.
So, what did you do with the heal?
So
You met your healing practitioner?
Met an amazing holistic practitioner. Did energy work, worked on the subconscious, the conscious mind, clearing blockages, not just physical, but mental, emotional, psychological, spiritual, realigning the body. So the body's naturally designed to regenerate and to heal itself.
Yes, it is.
So if it's not, the question is why? What's in the way? What's interfering? Where's the disconnection? And so a lot of the work that I did was about realigning the body so that the body can do its job, which is to heal itself.
Mm-hmm.
And there was many layers and aspects of that, to understanding the foods I ate and how they affected or hampered the healing process, the environment that's around me, and obviously the power of our mind and our thoughts.
Yes.
Is a huge element. And so as I integrated those all together, I quickly and significantly started healing my body, like in a ridiculous way.
In a great, ridiculous way.
In a very great, incredibly ridiculous way that I would have never, it was so ironic because with my law enforcement background, I'm so used to people trying to hustle me. So I didn't need or tell me some bullshit. So
my driver's license is in the car.
Understand, people, that we listen to, as law enforcement, we listen to people trying to lie to us all day, every day. And
what? The tail lights busted? No,
yeah,
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Can I just get a warning today?
So everybody's trying to get away with something. So sometimes you might come across a person telling the truth, but you're so used to the okay, let's work through this.
So you had to work through your skepticism.
Right. And sometimes
that's not desperate, but
right.
That's the urgency is the.
Well, sometimes you're being questioned, right, just to see if it starts to pass some of the test of if you're bullshitting or not. And just not only on the streets, but even with this, I challenged, believe me, I challenged intent. I was like, come on. You can tell me this woo-woo stuff. I went to the top surgeons, and they work on NFL players. Like, how is this hippy-dippy stuff going to be better? But there was some part of me that was like, all right, we've
tried everything else.
Yeah, well, I was like,
might as well. What if the woo-woo works?
That's right.
And the woo-woo worked?
And the woo-woo worked, man. a lot of woo-woo. Got to sprinkle woo-woo, sprinkle hippy-dippy.
Hey. So how long was it before how did you start releasing the medicines? How did you?
Oh, well, within a month, I was off of all the medicines.
Within a month?
And in half the pain.
Whoa.
Absolutely. I'm not talking about kind of, sort of. And there were many times in different parts I had certain procedures done and certain things done where I'm like, cool, I don't need this anymore. I was always very anti-medication. And it really, that same egoic part of me that was frustrated with being in that spot was the same thing. Like every time I had to take a pill, it like was another dagger into me that I was dependent on something to get through the day. And so each time I'd have something done, I'd like totally cut out everything, assuming I was going to get better, and I wouldn't. And then all the compare and contrast, that makes me think of the compare and contrast. I had a nurse assigned to me for like a year. And I remember coming out of, maybe it was out of the surgery, the next surgery, and it was still, and I'm like, oh, I don't need to do any of this. And I was still in so much pain. And she would tell me, Danny, like, man, you need to, I'm like, oh, people got it worse than me. There's a lot of people that got it worse than I do. Like, I can't complain. And she goes, you know what? You're right, Danny. Some people have it worse than you, and a lot of people got it better than you. And she says, look, you need, it's going to help you to acknowledge the pain and the struggle that you're going through. Oh yeah. That blew her off, and I get it now. You know what I mean? But at the time, I was like, "You don't know what you're talking about."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, it was a hell of a journey of. Oh, and just to say, with when my holistic practitioner was working with me, oh, I was challenging it in every corner. I mean, I still was open to it,
Mm-hmm.
and I think skepticism is great to have, but still be open.
And still a month was quick. So
Oh yeah.
it sounds like while you may have been skeptical, your need was strong enough that in some way you surrendered to it, or else it would not have worked if you hadn't done that.
Well, I'll tell you the biggest thing was for me to step into it and to believe and to trust.
Yeah, like how bad do you want it? It's like if you want this to work, you have to believe it will work, because that'll be that's the sealant. That's the determining factor, because you can do it, but if you don't believe it,
you know, and you've got to want it for yourself more than anybody else does. Yeah. And I've done a lot of work with people since to help heal themselves, to help overcome challenges, and I've seen many fall through the cracks. And what was good though is because I automatically accredited all of my healing and all of my success to my holistic practitioner. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you know, Jesus, you know, like, you know, that sense of like she gets an incredible amount of credit for it. Mm-hmm. And what I realized was the number one ingredient is our own resilience, our own will, our own wanting to just surrender and trust and overcome. Mm-hmm. And I realize more now after seeing so many other people fall through cracks in different ways is that there's still doubt. There's still these inner fears and challenges that make them still hold on to the old a little bit. Mm-hmm. And my experience is you've got to be the one that surrenders and you've just got to be, when you decide to do something, do it 100%.
That's right.
Don't kind of do it.
Don't kind of do it. 100%.
100%. And do it. You know, I found an easy way to do stuff now is as experiments. Try it on.
See how it fits.
If it don't fit good, you don't like the shirt, take it
don't fit. Don't force it. Just relax.
You always say, act like you bought it at Nordstrom's and Costco. Like, hey, you can return it, full refund.
That's right. That's right. So now you're getting your body back in shape. You're off the pills. You're no longer in law enforcement.
Yeah.
This thing you worked so hard to belong within. What now for your did you get yourself off of permanent disability, or did you just?
I did.
And then now what professionally? How did you?
So, well, there's a big window that's happened from there to where I am now. And, well, I say the first thing that came forward was the same reason with wanting to get in law enforcement was wanting to help people. Mm-hmm. And seeing people from my perspective growing up, I saw a lot of people taken advantage of. Mm-hmm. Seen a lot of people manipulated. I saw a lot of people being victimized, and that really bothered me. The unfairness that I saw in the world, and the people who weren't able to stand up for themselves. I got into law enforcement because of that. That was a very strong element of that, and the challenge often in law enforcement is it's after the fact. Mm-hmm. You know, you're responding, and then there's such a frustration and putting so much on the line and such a risk to help clean things up. And before you're done writing the report, the person's out, and you know or they go to court and they're let off very easily, like the guy who tried to kill me, mm-hmm. and many others all day. Every day. And there's a frustration that comes along with wanting to work so hard. And I imagine in the education system, you can 100% relate to that.
Absolutely.
And even, I believe, even in the Western medicine. Mm-hmm. Because think of all those fields that people come in with such a desire to want to help. And you're like, I'm ready to change the world. Then you get in there and you're handcuffed to the system.
Yes.
To the way things are and the way that you're supposed to do it.
And even the complacency of the participants as an educator. It's not just all those things, and then it's the cell phones too. It's like, hey, can you look up for your phone for a minute so we can talk about the future?
I couldn't even imagine dealing with the cell. Matter of fact, that needs to be a topic.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of our talks is because I have a lot of thoughts around that. However, I'm not in it all day, every day like you are. So I would love to hear more about the challenges of. My little niece Olivia, she's not so little anymore. She's just started her freshman year in high school and got a cell phone for the first time. And man, I just spent some time with her a few weeks ago, and only being a few months into high school and having a phone. Oh my God. The way they're just literally consumed.
They're addicted. I mean, it's like a kid in the candy shop. With no adult in the room.
And you know what? Any of us in that same situation would have been the same way. Right?
Yeah, if we didn't have somebody that was regulating. Like for me as a parent, I'm like, if I get one phone call about you and a cell phone in the classroom, see this little flip phone I got at 7-Eleven? This will be yours.
Yep, that's like my dad's.
Hand me back that iPhone, hand it here.
You hear that, Olivia? You're gonna get Grandpa's cell phone if you don't start balancing
You want this
that
flip phone where you gotta press 3 digits just to make a letter?
Oh my God!
You know what I'm saying? That would be some incentive,
Well, and I think about I know we're getting off topic here, but all the challenges already in going into high school. Like, it was overwhelming for me to deal with to begin with, let alone if you threw in that big enchilada of a distraction and all the moving parts.
And what about the people who are naturally? We got to talk about it. I want to finish what we're talking about with you, but what about the people who are antisocial, that have a tendency to be antisocial, and now they have a phone? That whole ability to be in a position where connection is necessary dissipates. So speaking of education, that's a career. So what, getting back to your story, like what did you decide in terms of a career? What's your new expression professionally?
Well now what happened immediately afterwards, to go back into, can I go back?
Absolutely.
So there was such frustration in that not having a purpose, and physically I wasn't capable of really doing anything. If you said, hey Danny, come in every morning from 8 to 10 for 2 hours and just sit at the front desk, and it would have been an impossibility for me, because I was in so much pain that I never slept more than 5-10 minutes at a time throughout the entire night. It was ridiculous, and I never knew how or when or where. It was such a talk about unpredictability of. But then at the same time, it was so frustrating to not be a part of something that I had decided, well, I just want to start a business. I want to buy a business, something that I can be a part of, even though I can't necessarily work it. So I was looking around at different professions, and then my girlfriend at the time was a professional ballroom dancer, and I saw the way her business was running. I saw that it was a fairly successful business, and I also saw how poorly the owner was running it and treating the employees. And it was very frustrating to me. I still very much was in my righteousness of like, people should be treated right, and and they were violating so many codes and this and that. And so anyways, I said, well, I'll tell you what, how about if I finance to open a new ballroom dance studio? What if, I still pay you the salaries to cover all your needs and bills, but you'll just come over and do the same thing. You were managing that ballroom dance studio. You come over here, you teach the lessons and manage this one. I didn't help train the other dance instructors and so forth, and I'll handle all the behind the scenes stuff that I can do on a computer from home, or whether it's 2 a.m. or 2 p.m. I can work on bits and pieces of it. And so I did that. I didn't take a salary or anything, and I just focused on creating a successful business with that. And so that's the first thing that I really got involved with as far as work went. Now, I was still going through massively all the challenges that I had, but it gave me a sense of belonging, and it helped give me a sense of connection. And then the blessing in that is that's how I met my holistic healer. She came in and take dance lessons.
Oh, wow.
From out of town, and I sold her a package, and we decided to exchange private lessons for treatments. And I really 100% feel like that was guided by the universe.
Yes, because look, all that had to be orchestrated.
That's
You
right.
went from the deputy sheriff to ballroom dance studio owner.
Yeah.
And still not feeling completely back in your body when dancing is such a physical thing.
Yeah, definitely. Well, there was even a crazier story. We talk about like challenges and how they provide opportunities. Well, I had just talked to a huge investor in the Sacramento area, and we had joined together with him and another dance studio that did tap, jazz, and ballet for kids. And we were joining together to spend, I think it was like $6 million to buy this huge 20,000 square foot plus building. And on one side, we were going to put in the kids tap, jazz, and ballet studio. And on the other side was going to be our ballroom dance studio. In the center, we're going to have a theater. And the end, I was opening a dance store. And so I had designed it like into this. It was going to be a huge expansion. And so my girlfriend at the time, we had separated, but we were still friends. And it worked out great because she ran the day-to-day operations in the studio. I handled other stuff from home. We weren't required to like have to work together all day, every day. So we were doing this together. And I asked her, I said, hey, something felt off. I'm like, something's off here. Like, she's not going to bail on me, is she? Because I was like, man, I would be in a world of hurt because this isn't my profession. This isn't my background. And I came to her, I said, hey, is anything wrong? You know, everything okay? She's like, no, everything's fine. And I'm like, you sure? Because just let me know now, I'll pull out of this deal because I'm going to be on the hook for a few $1 million. You know? And she's like, no, everything's good. I'm like, okay. And then they hit me up and were like, hey, Danny, we need you to sign that contract. And I said, you know what? And something inside of me told me something was off. And I said, can I get a little more time because I still need to have my attorney review the contract. I'll get back to you next week or whatever it was. And I'm telling you, and so like on that Wednesday, I went to Marine World. Six Flags now. It used to be called like Marine World, Six Flags up in Vallejo. And I went with my sister and my niece, Larissa, and we went there and I invited her to come along. And she came because we're friends still. That's to give you an idea of like how this was at such left field. So we go there. We have an amazing day. We all hang out, tons of fun. She was already planning to leave town that weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday to Florida for a dance competition or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. So she leaves. And then come Monday morning, I just happened to go in because I didn't have to normally be in the studio. I just happened to come in Monday morning to like get some out of the office, and this this older man shows up who's supposed to be taking his lessons at like 8 a.m. right, one-on-one with her, and it's like, oh, he's all grumpy old man, like where the heck? Where's she at? And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not sure. She was supposed to be here. I tried texting, no response. And then finally got a response. Oh, there was a weather delay. I'll be back there tomorrow morning. Scheduled for tomorrow. I'm like, okay. So I rescheduled him for the next morning. That next morning, he comes in again. She's not there.
Now he's mad.
He's pissed.
Yeah, he was okay to first. Okay, that happens. Yeah. The flight, weather, okay.
Yeah. He was, the typical grumpy old man, right? He's like, oh, and I'm like, I'm so sorry, sir. I'll try. And I try calling, and I'm sitting there looking at my phone while he's giving me the 10th degree. And I get this text back saying, sorry. I don't know who said sorry. It just said, I won't be back. I said, what? And I just remember and everything I'm thinking, man, all the hundreds of thousands of dollars of my own personal money I put into this, I'm on the hook for $15,000 a month and marketing and rent and all this stuff, and that I'm in contracts for. And remember, I don't know a lick. I'm in my physical condition. I don't know a lick of how to teach a lesson. I have other instructors, but none of them are at the high level to teach our competitive ballroom dancers. And so there's no way for me to even keep the door open the next day. And we were about to have a huge, we'd throw twice a year a big dinner and showcase where people would perform the lessons, black tie events,
Sounds
and catered, and oh yeah, it was incredible. And so that was supposed to be happening in a month, I think. Anyways, it was oh my God, this is unbelievable. It seemed like I started to cry right there, just reading that, and tears just started to come on. And the old man looked at me and was like, it's going to be okay. He just could feel it. He was like, don't even worry about it. Don't worry about it. Just give me a call whenever it works out. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going or what I'm doing. Everything I had ever worked for in my life, was gone. And the reason, go ahead, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, even how you're telling it is everything I've worked for is again. Everything again. I finally had something else going, and now
again.
Again.
Here we go again. Why? I'm like, man, but I just kept going. And that's the part that the fight that the ego part that can serve us too. I just was like, nope, got to get through this.
Did you try to keep it open for a while?
Yeah, I did. I kept it open for another 2 years. And that showcase, I pushed it back a month, but it still went off. And there was such a huge accomplishment in a sense that I was able to pull that off. But the reason why I tell that story is, as challenging and as horrible as that was, because of that, it forced me to have to be in the studio more to try to help make things work. And because of that whole situation, I was in the office the day that my holistic practitioner walked in.
Mm.
I would have not been in that dance studio.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's we talk about the way things are designed, and often we can't see it when we're in it. There's no way of knowing. There's no way I could have guessed what was down that new path for me.
Mm-hmm.
But just continuing to show up, and that I understand. And I ended up sending an email to my ex-girlfriend thanking her for it. I mean, not in a
no. I know it's not in a mean way, but that's how you know it's really good. I want to know how much you appreciate you doing what you did, because I was thinking okay, audience, real men do cry.
Oh,
he said he looked at the text message, so be careful about the text that you send. You know what I mean? It's at least pick up the phone and talk, and a lot of times they think that men don't feel at the same level that we do. We expect a certain level of sensitivity. But I mean, that was a dump by text scenario if I ever heard one.
That was brutal.
And it's a business, so it's worse. It's not even like it's a relationship. It's like my money is tied up in this. My money is invested in you, and you're leaving the business that we created.
When I came from nothing growing up, and I had to work to earn everything. And when I got in the department, instead of buying a new car, buying a new boat, doing all that stuff, I just saved and I invested. I bought a duplex, and then I bought another house, and then I bought another house. And I kept just rolling things over for down the road in the future. And I had done quite well for myself through doing that. And then I had owned a gorgeous 5-acre lot up in El Dorado Hills that overlooked the lake and the Sierras. And I was just going to sell all my properties and build my beautiful, gorgeous home and call it a day, right? But I was like, I don't need all that. Why don't I just invest in something that helps even more down for the road for when I'm married and have a family? And And so that's when I invested instead in the dance studio. But then all of a sudden, that thing happened, and I was like, oh my God, I literally just saw like everything I worked so hard for so long, I was going to lose my properties, I was going to lose this, lose that. I mean, I had no idea because, you know, when you've never been in that spot before, that type of a situation.
Your initial response is like, oh my God.
It's all gone.
It's all gone.
Yeah. But I would have never met, I mean, I shouldn't say never, but who knows?
It's a strong probability that your paths may not have crossed.
Not in that way.
Had you not, exactly. And in that way is the only way that in that exact moment it could have happened. Any other moment it would have been different.
So there's anything that I can express through the challenges of all of that. And I didn't even go into that. What was in between all that?
we definitely. I mean, if you're willing, we're willing to really, you know, at some time pick this back up, and because there's so much more. I mean, you still created a whole nother life for yourself since then. So there's still so much. So if you're willing, I would love for us to be able to, you know, go back into this. So this is Danny McFarland part 1 of 10.
1.0.
Yeah. I mean, and just to really thank you, you know, for your candidness about, you know, your life.
Absolutely.
Journey. I mean, it's appreciated, and we all grow together. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, and anytime anybody wants to know more, dig deeper, I know I didn't really get to dive too deep into anything particular, but if there's a certain topic that any of our viewers or anybody wants to know more about or explore more along that path of where Dr. C. Love went over her challenges and struggles with death
and grief.
And here's a challenge of physical pain and obviously emotional, psychological, that comes on both sides of that. And I think that there's a lot of people that can relate to that, whether it's right now in their life or in the past. And there's any ways that we can support you along that journey, share any tools or techniques that supported us getting through that. And we would love to do that. It's really about us building a community of connecting and being vulnerable and not perceiving help as a weakness. It's
absolutely.
A strength.
It is a strength.
It's an incredible strength.
Absolutely. So we thank you. Hope you join us next time.
Please do.